Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Parkinson's Foundation's PD Health at Home Wellness Wednesdays. I'm grateful you are here. Today's PD Health at Home Wellness Wednesday webinar will feature community members that share their personal experiences of navigating hospital stays with Parkinson's. We will learn about valuable resources that can support you during hospital visits, and we will learn about the unique challenges faced by people with Parkinson's in this setting. Before we get into it, I want to remind you about our PD Health at Home virtual programs. Each week, we offer sessions tailored to support people with Parkinson's and their care partners, including Mindfulness Mondays, Wellness Wednesdays, Fitness Fridays, expert briefings, and our Spanish language series, Y Salud en Casa. Be sure to visit our website by scanning the QR code to see what's coming up next and explore our archived videos on YouTube. PD Health at Home is presented by the Light of Day Foundation, whose generosity has made this programming possible. And now I'm delighted to introduce my colleague, Annie Brooks, the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Parkinson's Foundation. Annie, thank you for joining us for today's Wellness Wednesday webinar. Know that we appreciate your time and the expertise as you guide us through an important discussion on hospital safety. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Krista. All right, I'm going to share my screen and then kick us off. I'm so thrilled to be here. We have a lot of great information to share with you all today. Most importantly, we'll hear from community members who have been there, done that, sharing what they've learned. First, though, I want to speak briefly about why this is such an important topic for people with Parkinson's and for the people who love them. People with Parkinson's disease are at a higher risk of hospitalization, and while they're there, they face many challenges. It's important for all people with Parkinson's to be aware of these risks, prepare ahead of time, and really know how to advocate for their needs while they're in the hospital. This year alone, 4 out of every 12 people with Parkinson's in the US will be hospitalized. So if you're part of a support group, think about those numbers. Of those 4 that visit the hospital, 3 won't get the right medication on time throughout their stay. And when that happens, 2 of those 3 will have complications as a result. My slides are pre-advancing. We'd like to take a moment to hear from you all and get a sense of who is here today and what your own experiences with hospital care are. Oh, that's annoying that it keeps changing. All right, I'm going to unshare for a minute so we can do a quick poll. So what we'd love for you all to do now is to share your connection to Parkinson's disease, and we ask that you check all that apply to those sitting and watching together today. You'll see after that, we have a second question that's specifically for those of you with Parkinson's and for those of you who are a care partner or a loved one of someone with Parkinson's. So we want to hear a little bit about whether you've been in the hospital since receiving your diagnosis. All right, great. I see we've got a wonderful mix of folks. About half of us on the call have Parkinson's. All right, and here's that second question again. Let us know if you are a person with Parkinson's or if you have a loved one with Parkinson's, that, whether you've been hospitalized since your diagnosis at all or not, and give us a little idea of that timeline. We really appreciate your participation in this. It helps us really get a sense of who's listening as we share this important information with you all. All right. Okay, so about half of you have not had a hospitalization. I'm so thrilled to hear that. And then between those who have, it's been either within the last 6 months or more than a year. Really interesting. So let's dig in. Let me share screen once again. All right, let's talk about what can go wrong in the hospital. When someone with Parkinson's is in the hospital, whether Parkinson's contributed to what brought them there or not, We often see one problem lead to another. Through a domino effect, a small decision made by a well-meaning healthcare professional can have big negative consequences. We talk about this as the symptom spiral. One thing goes wrong, and that leads to another and another. And as Parkinson's symptoms get worse, the person with Parkinson's is at a higher risk for falls, swallowing changes, muscle deterioration, medication side effects, mental and physical decline, or even decreased independence. We want you to be educated on what can go wrong and prepared to explain how to avoid these missteps to your healthcare providers. Being here today is a really excellent first step. This is why the Parkinson's Foundation created the Hospital Safety Guide. This is a free resource for members of the Parkinson's community. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about how you can use this resource ahead of either a medical emergency or a planned medical procedure. But there's a lot more you can get from it if you order yourself a copy and spend some time with it together with your loved ones. Our hospital safety guide and educational programs like this one today are part of a broader hospital care initiative at the Parkinson's Foundation. Our vision for the hospital care initiative is to eliminate preventable harm and promote higher reliability and care for people with Parkinson's in the hospital. Community advocacy is our longest standing approach to improving hospital care for people with Parkinson's and continues to be a top priority. Just last year, we distributed over 19,000 hospital safety guides for free to members of the Parkinson's community. But today, we want to focus on the experience of being in the hospital. We have several My PD stories on our website that are focused on hospital experiences, and I've pulled a few quotes to share with you today before we hear from our true experts and hear their stories right from their own mouths. Julie shares that she went to the emergency department and they didn't believe her that she had Parkinson's. She said the ER team was convinced I was a drug addict and treated me like I had done something wrong. You can read the rest of her story on our website. Karen had a negative reaction to a new Parkinson's medication that brought her to the hospital, but they wouldn't give her any of her Parkinson's medications when she went there. She says, I was admitted to the hospital for observation overnight due to low blood pressure, and the medical team refused to give me my Parkinson's medications. And then finally, Terry became a Parkinson's Foundation ambassador after several challenging hospital visits. She shared, I was admitted to the hospital 3 times between 2014 and 2019. Each time I had problems getting my medication on time. I realized that many of the people working around me did not really know enough about Parkinson's. This is a really common story, and we're going to hear 2 more experiences today about how common these challenges are. And we don't share this to scare you. We share this because it's important information to know ahead of time so that you can hopefully avoid preventable harm. So with that, let's hear our first story.
Gotten severe COVID out in Oregon. So some of my folks flew back and developed a pulmonary embolism. So to the hospital. At that time, I had gotten a lot of information from the Parkinson's Foundation and the packets, the forms my neurologist filled out. You know, I thought we had it down pretty good to the science of doing the right moves. We went into the ER and the information, the guidelines, what to do, and they said they had scanned it into the system. Anyway, they did not. And at that point, I had developed an aspirational pneumonia. They had put me on a ventilator and was waiting for a COVID room.
Yeah.
During that time, they didn't give me any medications for Parkinson's disease, and it just spiraled my white blood cell count was going up, my respiration, blood pressure was sky high, then it was low. So it just, everything was not normalized.
This is when he got out of the ER. They finally got him a room. And I remember when the new doctor came on the floor, Ron was talking to him and the doctor was talking to him, but I could just tell that the doctor just had no clue. So I politely just asked him to come out in the hallway and I said, may I ask you, first of all, do you know anything about Parkinson's? And he said, no. I said, have you read my husband's chart? And he says, not yet. And I said, I know my husband sounds like a know-it-all, but he is when it comes to Parkinson's. And I said, please look at his records before you do anything else. And he said, okay, I will. And funny story is, I mean, you were there, what, how many days? 7?
7 days.
7
yeah.
days. He kept listening to the information that we were giving him. And at the end of the stay, he said that we made him a better doctor. And unfortunately, you know, when you're on a ventilator, you can't speak.
Yeah.
You can't speak. And when you're not on it, your voice is very muffled. So sad to say, and I get it, nurses can get frustrated because they don't understand what he's saying. But this is again where it's very important to have the information, know what Parkinson's is all about. That way they can understand more.
Yeah.
And I know with Ron, there was a visiting nurse, and I don't like to be cruel to anybody. I don't like to argue. I don't like to do any of that kind of stuff. But she came in her first time, and you know how they always got to look at your birth date. And she said to Ron, she goes, stop shaking your hand, just like that. And I said, I'm sorry, but he has Parkinson's. She goes, I don't care. He can stop shaking his hand.
Yeah.
And I said, no, he cannot. And Ron looked at me like, whoa. But you know, he was on the ventilator. I gave her 2 more chances. You know, it's like in baseball, 3 times you're out. And I kindly dismissed her and I said, I'm sorry, but you know, you're not fit for this situation, you know, bad bedside manner. We're here because he is ill. He needs help and he doesn't need to be yelled at. And I said, please get us another nurse. She said, I can't. I said, yes, you can. In 5 minutes, we had another nurse, which really took good care of us.
Yeah.
But, you know, and so there was a few that just, they don't understand that if they give them the medicine on time, every time, it's going to be easier for them.
Yeah. It's
going to
easier
be
for
him,
the
easier
health
for them.
professional.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking clearly. I was having hallucinations. I mean, I had gone into what a Parkinson's form of what they call a neuroleptic malignant syndrome. It's because your medication didn't get on time. On top of that, I did have COVID, severe COVID. So, you know, the amount of the medications just don't work as well, or they work too good sometimes. You know, from the dyskinesia, which probably is why I got the dyskinesia. But a lot of that could have been helped out tremendously with just a little bit of, you know, awareness of some of the basics that is the, you know, the 5 needs of the hospital that is, you know, in the information that the Parkinson's Foundation, because I don't think there's any better foundation when it comes to that knowledge and you know, conveying it to the medical professionals. So anyway, we got out of there.
But we had to call the family advocate to help us. And I was so scared because there was what, 2 times the crash cart came in.
Yeah, I mean, it was originally, I think after a while they got it.
Yeah.
Once I got my medication, when they did start my medication back up, they doubled it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I had the you know, carbidopa levodopa, the 25 125 or it was 25 100, I think it was, and they put the 250 the 200s on there, and unfortunately that just threw me over the edge as well. So
Our son came in and he
yeah,
took one look and he's like,
yeah,
"Is he okay?" And I'm like, they just changed his medicine up. And so I was so scared because I'm like, what are they going to do next? I ended up staying there like 5 nights,
yeah,
sleeping in a chair just
yeah.
because but I had to go. I had to literally go and tell them it's time for the medicine all the time. And, I had to be the one to bathe him and everything because they didn't do that. They didn't change his bandages.
Yeah.
They didn't. So when the family advocate came in, she just kind of looked around and she said, "Did anybody come in here to clean at all?" I said, "I've been here for 5 days and no."
Yeah.
"And have they changed his bed?" I said, "I changed the bed. That shouldn't have to happen." It's just was,
It was a really bad experience, and after it got out, and then got my head together, then we started writing the different hospitals and the patient advocates and saying, listen, this is not just about us right now. If
others.
if we're given the correct information off and it's still not working, what about the other Parkinson's patients that are coming in that don't have care partners that are, vocal and really are trying to help out? What do you don't? What about the, communication with everyone else?
Mhm.
And so I said, what we would love to do is try to, find some way that's going to help other patients out. At that point is when we contacted Sadie and let her know about, our story. And she, asked if we'd be interested in sharing our story and also becoming ambassadors with the Parkinson's Foundation, which we were thrilled to
Mhm.
become and be part of. Um,
It's been
yeah,
so helpful because I
yeah,
remember sitting at Dartmouth, Ron sitting next to me, and we had our package, and there was a lady sitting with her husband, and I looked over and I could tell that he had Parkinson's. And he had went into the room, her husband did, and I just looked at her and I said, "May I ask, does your husband have Parkinson's?" And she said, "Yes. And he doesn't want me to go into the office with him." And I said, "Do you feel like are heard by the doctors? Do you feel like you're getting the adequate care?" And she goes, "No, I don't think they know anything about Parkinson's." And so I told her our story a little bit and gave her the information. And she's like, "Thank you so much. It's going to be so helpful." And we just recently, several months ago, met a man who he was way deep into Parkinson's, stage 4, really bad
yeah,
off. But he ended up in the hospital several times because he fell at his home. And his caregiver called us to say, "Help, we need help." And it was just like saying, the minute we said we are ambassadors for the Parkinson's Foundation, and because we saw he was in there for a day, right?
yeah.
And terribly dehydrated,
So we
was
went
not.
in to visit him. Yeah,
Yeah, we went in to visit him, not hooked up to anything. He had fallen, the bandage looked terrible. But the minute we said ambassadors, it was like somebody came, hooked him up with solution and cleaned them all up, and it was like amazing.
yeah.
So
If someone is going into the hospital, uh, first of all, try to be prepared before you go in. Uh, Read over the Parkinson's Foundation materials because it's life saving. It really is. Um, and give that to your medical professionals. Become a strong voice. Do not be afraid to show this information and to really stand by it. Um, if you can have a care partner, if you do not, contact a patient advocacy. A lot of times they can help out with that too. That's a really big thing. And um, you know, keep positive. Keep positive, knowing that some people will not know about Parkinson's disease, and try to work with them in the best way you can. Um, and be hopeful. There is always hope. There's another day coming, and just keep hanging on. There is a cure coming down the road, and don't give up.
And as a caregiver, what I was going to say to a caregiver is to make sure if he doesn't have the information, you always have it with you. That little bag needs to be given to the doctors, nurses, whatever, and to remember that your person with Parkinson's is going to be very scared. They're the ones in the hospital. They're very nervous. So you need to remain calm, be positive with them, let them know things are going to be okay, that you're there for them, and to be their voice when they can't use their voice, and to just have a positive attitude, yourself, and to be vocal when you need to be vocal, and to just that medicine, make sure if you have to stay there with them, and because that's going to be a help for them too.
There was a lot there. And I think there are a few things I want to highlight for you. Ron and Amy shared an excellent approach to communication with the healthcare team. We have two main tips that we give generally to people with Parkinson's and their loved ones for communicating and collaborating with the hospital care team. First, we encourage you to always start by assuming the best. Your care providers want you to get better. They want you to return home safely, but they might not know how to do that with your specific Parkinson's needs. And the other piece that we recommend is to always try to be honest and direct, but also respectful when communicating your needs. And I think that Amy demonstrated both of these tips beautifully and masterfully. She shares that she took the doctor aside and gently asked if he knew anything about Parkinson's or if he'd had a chance to review Ron's chart. And she urged him to listen and learn from them. He chose to listen to them. She couldn't choose that for him, but he did. And they heard from him before Ron was discharged that he felt they made him a better doctor. As we recommend, she assumed he was doing his best with the information and tools he had. And she provided the information and tools he didn't have. This allowed him to improve the care he provided for Ron, but also for patients he'll treat in the future who have Parkinson's disease. And when Amy shared that the nurse was not acting appropriately with Ron, yelling at him for shaking, her response was to try to calmly correct her. And then, when the nurse chose not to adjust, Amy's choice to communicate what they needed to find another nurse was exactly right. She was honest, direct, and respectful, but firm in what they needed. The other thing that Ron and Amy did that I want to emphasize for you all today is how they turned a negative experience into a positive way to act towards change. They mentioned working with Sadie, who's one of my colleagues here at the Parkinson's Foundation. And I'm happy to share that we have Sadie here to share a little bit about being a Parkinson's Foundation ambassador before we hear our next story. So Sadie, I'd love to invite you to hop on camera and unmute and share a little bit with this group.
Thank you so much, Annie. I am so honored to be here and to have been mentioned by name by Ron and Amy in their story. But I am Sadie McCoy. I'm the manager of volunteer engagement here at the Parkinson's Foundation and the granddaughter of a person with Parkinson's. When I first heard Ron and Amy's story and their drive to make change so that others wouldn't have to experience the same things they did, I knew that the Parkinson's Foundation ambassador role was going to be absolutely perfect for them. Our Parkinson's Foundation ambassadors connect people impacted by Parkinson's with the needed resources and information provided by the Parkinson's Foundation. They raise awareness and understanding about Parkinson's disease to help influence change, and they help build a trusted bridge between the community and the foundation and build those connections between individuals that share a similar experience. This can be done in several different ways as an ambassador by spreading awareness and resources in the community, by researching community outreach opportunities, tabling at local events, or even giving presentations in the community. The first step to becoming a Parkinson's Foundation ambassador is to register for our volunteer orientation at parkinson.org/volunteer orientation. We made it real easy for you. And we do have one coming up next Tuesday on March 25th. So if you're interested in maybe following Ron and Amy on their amazing path, I would love to see your smiling faces attending. Once you've completed all of the steps and you officially have that title of Parkinson's Foundation Ambassador, you're then welcome to take our additional trainings, such as our hospital safety training, just like Ron and Amy, so that you can share the hospital safety guide in your community as well. Then you're going to have that basic knowledge in your toolbox to represent us in the community and to look at additional roles. One such additional role is our People with Parkinson's Advisory Council. Cindy, whose story we're going to dive into next, is one of our wonderful members of PPAC, as we like to call it, and I am so excited to share her story with you now.
My name is Cindy Finestone, and I'm a member of the People with Parkinson's Advisory Council. So I was diagnosed in 2013 with Parkinson's, and recently I needed to go into the hospital for a knee replacement. The knee replacement went totally fine. Everything was great. It was all the other things around my Parkinson's and my medications that did not go the way it should have. I was so diligent about making sure that I covered all my bases before I went to the hospital, and it just went from bad to worse. From the moment I walked in, I knew it would be a problem when nobody there knew I had Parkinson's. So I had made copies of all of my records about Parkinson's, what my neurologist had said, and I handed them all out. The neurologist had been very diligent in saying what I could and couldn't take, what medications would interact. The anesthesiologist came and talked to me 3 separate times about when I was going to get out of the surgery, if a half an hour late would be a problem. And I said, no, as long as I get my medication within that block of time. He said, I'll make sure you're not too anesthetized and that you're awake so you can take your medication. And when I got out of the OR and I woke up and I said to the recovery room nurse, do you have my medication? She looked at me like I had 2 heads and did not know that I had Parkinson's. So 2.5 hours later, I got my medication. And then the pharmacist came upstairs and said, we don't have 2 of your medications here to give to you. And I said, well, lucky for me, I have them in my little bag here. So they took them downstairs and did whatever they do to make sure that they're what they say they are, and she let me take them. I had 1 oxycodone the whole time I was in the hospital, but come to find out that interacted with one of my medications that I took at night. So when I went home, everybody was on me about making sure I didn't let the pain get ahead of me. So I took the medication, but I was also taking Escalation, which is the drug that interacted severely. I went into serotonin syndrome, where you don't know what's going on. My husband ended up calling the service and they talked to him about getting an ambulance because I kept saying to him, something's wrong. I couldn't see. I had no fever, and a half an hour later I was 103 fever. And I started having other symptoms that go along with that serotonin syndrome. And the next day they tried to put me on a different medication, and my local pharmacist called me and said, Cindy, you can't be on this. And she started listing all the symptoms that I had. She goes, you were in crisis. Like, they should have sent you to the hospital. Even though this happened and it really wasn't a fun experience, I'm happy to say that the hospital I went to see their patient liaison, and they asked me to be part of their patient family advocacy council. It's all about education and making sure that the right people know the information, and sometimes they just don't. The hospital's talking about doing some educational things for their nursing staff, the doctors, and contacting me and getting the foundation to be a part of that.
It was almost like a whole 360 turnaround compared to the first time. They really spent a lot of time with me. They went through my medication list more than once. They called me twice before I even went in the hospital to go over my medication list. They marked things in red. I got a special red band when I went to the hospital to make sure that everybody was checking my chart. The anesthesiologist, when he came in, I said, "Do you need me to tell you anything about my medical background?" He goes, "Oh no, I've read up on you. I know everything about you," which was totally the opposite of the first time, because the first time they didn't even know I had Parkinson's. I was actually wide awake in the OR before they took me to recovery room and made sure that I got my Parkinson's med right away. So everything that happened went really well. I had no interaction with any meds, and my Parkinson's meds were given on time. It was so different, and now I'm part of their patient advisory council. Hopefully I'll make a difference. My story will make a difference. To all you people there, just be sure you're aware of all your medications and have an advocate if you can't advocate for yourself while you're in a hospital.
Again, so much to learn from one another's stories. I want to highlight a few important things for you to keep in mind about Cindy's experience. We're going to talk in a minute about preparing like Cindy did, but as you all heard, sometimes you prepare and then you still find yourself in a dangerous situation. When the hospital didn't have her medication, Cindy was able to use her home supply. Typically, hospital pharmacies will only let you use your home supply if you bring it in the original bottle labeled from your pharmacy. So you always want to bring these along with you. We recommend a 2-day supply at least. You can put these in your hospital go bag, which we review within the hospital safety guide. I think Ron and Amy referenced that in their video. Now back to Cindy. Even though the pharmacy confirmed that it was the right medication, because it was her own supply and not from theirs, I suspect that medication didn't make it into her medical chart. Their computer system, in theory, should have flagged for them that there was an interaction with the pain medication they had prescribed. There's no way for us to know if that flag would have come up, or even if it did come up, if the pharmacist would have recommended a change. So why is that important to keep in mind? Well, we sometimes hear that people with Parkinson's will sneak their medications from home if they aren't getting them at the hospital. The best option whenever possible is to make sure your medical team knows what medications are in your system and is using the tools in their computer to make sure there are no interactions. So I say that just so that you all have that in mind, because in theory, there may be safeguards that get missed in various situations. And then finally, it's important to remember that medication reactions can happen while you're in the hospital, or they can happen after you're discharged. Cindy experienced delirium, a temporary change in thinking or behavior that develops over hours or days. This is really common in the hospital, especially after surgeries. And people with Parkinson's, as well as older adults, are particularly vulnerable. This can happen while you're at home after being discharged. So when you go home from the hospital, especially after a surgery, it's really important that you're prepared to follow up with your doctor if you find yourself feeling disoriented or unwell. And if you weren't taking all of your Parkinson's medications in the hospital, by design or by error, make sure that you ask about any interactions that may happen if you add them back in before you head home. So what can someone with Parkinson's do to try to avoid a negative hospital experience? Well, from this moment that you're watching this webinar, the best thing you can do is plan ahead. Having someone you trust there and ready to speak on your behalf is essential. Because even if you're able to communicate well in your normal day-to-day circumstances, you might not be able to communicate as well in an emergency. Whether your voice is softer than usual or you aren't thinking as clearly as you usually do, having someone who can listen to treatment instructions, make sure your medication schedule is being followed, and help communicate your needs could be the difference between a positive and negative experience. Don't wait for an emergency. Talk to friends and family this week and identify who can serve as your hospital care partner. Prepare them so that they understand your medication schedule and your needs before an emergency happens. We always hope that you will not need them, that your next hospital visit is years away. But it could be anything that brings you to the hospital, even something random like a car accident. And being prepared is the best way to avoid a negative experience. And I have good news. You don't have to remember everything that we've talked about in an emergency situation where you're going to be frazzled and disoriented and panicked. Our hospital safety guide is a tool designed to help you prepare before an emergency happens and to be used in real time when navigating an emergency. If you don't already have a copy, I urge you to order a free guide today before you sign off your computer. Review all of the information with your loved ones and remember to use the resources that are in it whenever you end up in the hospital. The Parkinson's Care Summary for Health Professionals. There are multiple copies within the Hospital Safety Guide that you can tear out and hand directly to the nurses, the doctors, the pharmacists, whoever is caring for you that maybe doesn't know what they need to about Parkinson's disease. And the doctor's letter is a really great tool that you can have your Parkinson's doctor sign that then can be communicated as a doctor's order for the care that you need. It's another tool in the toolbox that may or may not make the difference in having hospital staff get you what you need. But it's a really helpful one, and it's one they take seriously most of the time. And finally, if you or a loved one are in the hospital and you don't feel like your needs are being heard, we outline 4 steps to escalate the situation. First, you want to talk to your primary nurse, the nurse who's coming in and talking to you and providing your care. Hopefully, they'll be able to address your need. However, if they aren't able to resolve the issue, the next person to ask to speak to is the charge nurse. This is that primary nurse's supervisor, and they oversee the floor or the unit and all of the nurses who are providing care directly to patients. If the charge nurse isn't able to resolve the issue, that's when you want to ask if you can speak or if the doctor will speak to the hospital neurologist, the hospital pharmacist, or to call your Parkinson's doctor. This is a great time to pull out that doctor's letter if you've gotten it signed. There's a spot on the back for your doctor to list how to get in touch with them. And finally, once you've done those things, if you still don't feel you've been heard, if your needs are not being met, there's 2 things we recommend you do. First, ask that they record your concern in your medical chart. This creates a paper trail and is a subtle message that you mean business. And the other thing you can do is ask to speak to the patient representative or patient advocate. That hospital staff member will swoop in, and their job is to appease you. And they can be a great resource in the moment. And as we heard from Cindy, and I think from Ron and Amy as well, after the fact, if you want to see how care was provided, change. Now, I'm going to stop sharing screen, and I would love to invite Cindy and Ron and Amy to join me on camera, and let's answer some questions. Wonderful. I see you, Ron and Amy, and I see you, Cindy. Thank you guys so much for being here today, and again, for sharing your stories. Before we kick into the questions, anything you want to say just based on the information we've covered so far?
Excellent job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very, the stories of Cindy and there's a trend as we can see, and we are just so grateful, myself and my super advocate wife, Amy, of being able to share our story. And thank you for allowing us to do that.
And I'm so glad, Cindy, the second time you went, that things were better.
Yes, night and day. I was the queen the second time around.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that encourages us in case Ron ever has to go again. Could be better.
Well, hopefully not. I actually worked as a respiratory therapist and worked in the ICU quite a bit. So listening to your story, I know what was happening to you. And on top of having Parkinson's, it was quite the journey, I'm sure, for you to navigate. So I'm glad you're doing well.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, and I think you guys can all answer this. As you think about your most recent or one of your recent hospital experiences, what are some things you might do differently or add to what you did to prepare for your next hospital stay?
No, that's a great question. I think that from our standpoint, it was kind of a sudden thing to go in, but being more prepared is just making sure I would actually uh, make sure that I had contacted the patient advocate, see that we had originally talked to make sure that the medications are listed, all of the Parkinson's Foundation information that should be in the records are indeed there, and that my care giver and advocate, if you have one, is theirs too. If you don't, as I believe you mentioned, Annie, friends, family, make sure that someone is there to be your voice if you don't have one. And I'm fortunate enough to have a very strong voice here by me. Someone that I love and it really is very compassionate. But some people don't. A lot of people don't. So, make sure that there are someone, to try to reach out to and get a hold of patient advocacy if you are in the hospital.
I think because ours was so sudden, we weren't prepared enough. But if you, like Cindy, when you have, when you know you're going to have surgery, right? It's nice that we got all these tools now to be able to, okay, the doctor who's going to do the surgery, the anesthesiologist, we can already, get in contact with them, let them know, and just, so that everybody in that circle is familiar with what you need and not need. Those interactions of certain medications are terrible.
Yeah, yeah. Well put.
I mean, I think I thought I was prepared the first time, but I think being prepared has different meanings. Like I had all my I thought I had everything all done, but I really probably hadn't maybe contacted the right people, or maybe I should have gone one step further and made sure that everybody had read my chart. I mean, you would think that they would have, and they probably did, but maybe the Parkinson's diagnosis wasn't one of the at the forefront because I've had other things. And so they quickly, they're busy. They quickly go through the list. But for me, it all turned out fine in the end, but it could have been, just like you, it could have been a different situation. And I think you are correct. You have to be firm, not mean or anything, whether it's the advocate or yourself. You need to be able to advocate for yourself, and don't back down, because you know what's right for your health, and you just need to be sure that they understand what is the correct thing for yourself also, especially with medications, because they have a window. There's the nurses have a window of time that they can give medication. Well, the window of time does not correlate with Parkinson's medication. So that's a big issue. They don't look at it that they have to be sure you get it within a certain block of time, because usually they have 2 hours before and 2 hours after a medication is due to give it to the patient. So
I think all these tools though, and like going to the hospitals, talking to the CEOs, and all this information is going to be so helpful. Even this webinar is going to be so helpful. And because they're going to have this education, the nurses and the doctors, and it's going to be a win-win for everyone.
I agree.
Learned when we've gone to the hospitals before, the Parkinson's Foundation has done an amazing job in the information that is conveyed. So we have like a package now, and then this guy is the main one. We hand it to all the department heads, to all administration, everyone we can. But the most important one right here, I think, is this one-page deal that is a tear out in the book itself. And this is really a 5-minute read that we give from everyone, from the parking garage attendant to receptionist to everyone that comes into the office. And we let them know that you can get continuing education credits that you would need for medical credits through the vast array of educational seminars, webinars, information that is amazing. I mean, this is free information that could save lives, and it's readily available to anyone. And so for us, we really, going to what we are doing right now that's different before is trying to get the word out. And pretty much everyone's very receptive. Most people say, I didn't know that. I thought that everyone's with Parkinson's shakes. That's kind of what it is. They don't know of some of the movement type of problems that are out there, which are really as important as some of the movement issues that Parkinson's patients have. So
You're
anyway,
so right, Ron.
And I keep these cards in my wallet all the time.
made up these cards here that instead of hauling around a whole bunch, the bag of stuff, which we still do, but it's got the QR code on there, so they can just wave it over their phone and go to this information.
Oh,
Where they can
wow.
go to donate as well. And on the back, it's got the 5 Parkinson's needs in the hospital.
That's so cool.
It works really good. It's easy. Instead of giving them cutting down a ton of trees to to do this, I think it's real easy to go to the website, tells everything, and it's simple. But we can verbalize kind of how it's helped us and how it could help them.
If I notice like somebody like in a grocery store or something that may have Parkinson's, I have no problem with asking outright. And these cards have come in handy. And
That's really great.
Really works well.
I love it. You know, there are so many different approaches and so many different ways that you can approach the conversation. I think it's all really helpful and important. We got a question about scheduled surgeries. What advice would you give to someone facing an upcoming hospital stay for the first time since their diagnosis?
Well, um, I had a scheduled surgery, and when you do the scheduled surgery, you go for pre-op, and they have you do everything, and they ask you all the questions and go through your medication list and everything. But even though they do that, and I did that the first time around, like Annie was talking about how my medication could have gotten a little bit mixed up where they didn't realize that I was on a medication because that was one of the medications they did not have in their pharmacy. So you just have to be diligent and make sure that like the kit, the book that you're talking about, go through that book. There's so many great points and advice to follow. And if you narrow it down to the certain things that you want to be sure will happen, I think that's a good thing to be just and if you can't yourself can't, you need an advocate to speak for you, like with Ron and Amy. Because things could have been a lot worse for him if he didn't have his wife. I'm assuming it's his wife next to him during the whole process, because he would not have been speaking. He was on a ventilator. So, and she stayed there with him. I mean, that's another thing. A lot of people have their advocates stay with them. And even though you don't want to stay in the hospital, I think sometimes you just have to. So,
Great advice. Yeah, when I've gone through scheduled surgeries after my initial hospitalization, that we've ran into some challenges. One thing is, of course, with the type of anesthesia they give you, as well as the anti-nausea medication. At one point, they gave me compazine, which was really bad news. It blocks dopamine, which there's not a lot in my brain, and so it can really cause some severe problems. Um, uh, I contacted the anesthesiologist or department, and the director of the department went over some of my needs. I was involved in a chemical accident that injured my lungs in 2017. So um, how they, I do have some tremors and body movement. So there's a new type of, it's not new, it's been around for a while, but they use a dexmedetomidine, which is it doesn't depress your lungs, meaning that there's no danger or less danger in it. They use it sometimes for the deep brain stimulation, so people are kind of awake and they can, be a little more sedated. So they have done that, and it works out really well. There's no after effects. If I wake up, I don't have any issues, and it does what they need it to do the procedure. So getting involved with the medical professionals ahead of time, so they know your medications and the contraindications of what the medicines you should not do or be given is essential. And again, it's a safety issue.
I think those are all really important points. And I'll just emphasize that talking to your Parkinson's doctor ahead of a scheduled surgery makes a big difference as well, especially if they're in the same health system and can, maybe send a note through the electronic health record over to the surgeon or to the team. It's not a perfect solution, but it is another tool in your tool belt. So I think that is about all the time we've got. Any final closing thoughts, Ron, Amy, or Cindy, that you think we may have missed or that you want to emphasize before we wrap up?
Well,
I
I
just
think,
really just be, I'm sorry.
no,
Just
please. Please.
just be an advocate for yourself and just really don't let, everyone's human. The doctors, the nurses, everyone. And even though they do have more knowledge, and maybe they have more knowledge than you do, but you have a lot of knowledge yourself in regards to your own illness. So just be sure you don't you advocate, and you make sure that you let people know what you need.
Absolutely. I think right along with that, Cindy, well put, by the way. It's like Michael J. Fox has said, the person living with the disease is the experts. Um, and it's because the caretaker, the caregiver knows of what needs to be done. And, the medical specialists, they are so much more in tune with that as long as they know what they're dealing with. We have some amazing physicians, nurses, hospital staff that are so hardworking, compassionate, but they need to know the information. And we need to convey that the best we can, advocate for our own health, be strong advocates, and really use whatever tools we can. And some of the best out there, I believe, for this situation is from the Parkinson's Foundation.
I was just thinking the same exact thing. The foundation, whenever you have a question, they're my go-to.
Absolutely.
We love to hear that. We really want to be that resource for you. So as we close, I just want to re-emphasize for you, our hospital safety guide is free and we will mail it to you. You just have to order one. You can also download on the website, and you can see here on the screen exactly what to do. So you're going to go to the website, parkinson.org/hospital safety, and then you can you scroll down a little bit to that order now that we've got circled there on the screen. If you click the download now, that's another great way to access the information, but having something in your hands to bring along with you in an emergency situation is really, really helpful. So if you're going to order, you click that button. I don't know why my slides are timed. I got to figure out fixing that for myself. And then you're going to find yourself at that order publication screen, and you'll just scroll down and fill in the information. You can check off the hospital safety guide and any other resources you'd like to receive, and we'll send it out to you at no cost. So again, there are lots of things that you can do to prepare today. I want to say thank you so much to Cindy and Ron and Amy, and I want to turn it back over to Krista.
Thanks so much for your expertise, Annie and Ron and Amy and Cindy and Sadie, for sharing your time today. Really appreciate you all sharing your stories, and everyone who joined us today for our Wellness Wednesday webinar. Thank you for being here. If we didn't get to a question, or perhaps you weren't prepared to ask a question today, or if something comes up as you process the information, you get your tools preparing for your scheduled or unplanned hospital visit, know that the Parkinson's Foundation is here to help. You can visit our website at parkinson.org. You can also call our helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO. You can email them at helpline@parkinson.org. And before you go, just one more ask of you all. Your feedback, knowing is essential to shaping the Foundation's programming. So as the webinar concludes, a survey will pop up on your screen. Please just take a moment to share your thoughts and let us know what topics you'd like to hear and learn from in future sessions. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that you take the action to prepare for yourself and for your loved ones in the community. Share with your support groups and those in your networks, y'all. Until then, be safe, be well, be healthy, and stay moving.